Good evening, friends, fiends, and curious magical beings. And I really mean beans this time, like B-E-A-N-S, not beings, but beans, because tonight, well, first of all, welcome to A Bit Late. Tonight we are reading Jack and the Beanstalk, a classic tale of gigantic proportions. Haha, yay, fun times to be had. So, I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening and are ready for a tale. Do get comfy, get cozy, summon your animal familiars. Maybe a cow would be appropriate for this. I don't know. Hot chocolate? Milk? Might be a good alternative. I don't know. Anyway, get your candles, get your blankets, get your pillows, and get ready for the fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack was an idle, lazy boy who would do no work to support his widowed mother. And at last they both came to such poverty that the poor woman had to sell her cow to buy food to keep them from starving. She sent Jack to the market with the cow, telling him to be sure and sell it for a good price. As Jack was going along the road to the market, he met a butcher. The butcher offered to buy the cow in exchange for a hatful of colored beans. Jack thought the beans looked very pretty and was glad to be saved the long, hot walk to the market. So he struck the bargain on the spot and went back to his mother with the beans, while the butcher went off with the cow. Oh dear. I mean, holy cow. But the poor widow was very disappointed. Yeah. She scolded her son for an idle, lazy, good-for-nothing boy and flung the beans out the window in a passion. But now you can't even eat them. Oh well. Now the beans were magic beans. Ooh. And the next morning when Jack awoke, he found some of them had taken root in the night and had grown so tall that they reached right up into the sky. And no one else noticed this before old Jack? Curious. Jack was full of wonder and curiosity, and being fond of adventure and excitement, he set out at once to climb the beanstalk to see what was at the top of it. And he climbed, 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 until at last he climbed right up to the very tip-top of the beanstalk. Then he found himself standing in a strange country. In the distance he could see a big castle, and as he was hot and tired with his long climb, which couldn't be bothered that for the market, but he will do a hot long climb up a beanstalk to who knows where. He thought he would go and ask for something to eat and drink. He had not gone very far before he met a fairy who told him that the castle belonged to a wicked ogre who had killed and eaten a great number of people. It was he who killed your father, she said. Oh, how convenient. And it is your duty to do your utmost to destroy the wicked monster. Go now and see what you can do. If you can carry off any of his treasures, you are at liberty to do so, for none of them really belong to him. He has taken them all by force from the people whom he has robbed and killed. I would maybe ask around after that information, Jack, but Jack was delighted at the idea of this adventure. What? Here, go off someone. Oh yeah, I can't wait. And set off in high spirits towards the castle. Yippee! The castle was farther off than he had thought, and by the time he reached the gates, it was so late that he made up his mind to ask for a night's lodging. At the castle? With the ogre who he's supposed to kill? Who kills people? What? There was a woman standing in the doorway, but when Jack made his request, she was frightened and said, "Indeed, I dare not take you in and give you food and lodging. My husband is an ogre who lives on human flesh. If he were to find you here, he would think nothing of eating you up in 3 mouthfuls. I advise you to go away at once before he comes home." He doesn't even savor his dinner. But when she saw how tired and hungry Jack really was, she took him into the house and gave him plenty to eat and drink. While Jack was eating his food in the kitchen, there came a loud knocking at the door. The ogre's wife, in a great flurry, hid Jack in the oven. Just prepare him while you're there, I guess. And then hurried to let her husband in. Jack peeped through the oven door and saw a terrible-looking ogre who came stamping into the kitchen and said in a voice like thunder, "Wife, I smell fresh meat." "It is only the people you are fattening in the dungeon," said the wife. So the ogre sat down and ate his supper. After supper, he commanded his wife to bring him his money bags. He then began to count his money. Thousands and thousands of pieces of gold and silver. A little after-dinner entertainment, I guess. I mean, if you eat your dinner in 3 bites, you gotta have something to do, I guess. Jack wished he could take some of the money home to his mother, and presently, when the ogre fell asleep, he crept out of his hiding place and, hoisting the bags upon his shoulder, slipped quietly away with them. The ogre was snoring so loudly that it sounded like the wind in the chimney on a stormy night. So he never heard the little noise Jack made, and Jack got safely away and escaped down the beanstalk. Oh, Jack, maybe steal something he hadn't counted, though. He just counted them. He has a number in mind. Oh no. I mean, he did trade a cow for beans, though, so... His mother was overjoyed to see him, for she had been very anxious about him when he did not come home the night before. And she was delighted with the bags of money, which were enough to keep them in comfort and luxury for some time. For many months, Jack and his mother lived happily together, but after a while, the money came to an end. How? And Jack made up his mind to climb the beanstalk again. It's still rooted in the earth. It hasn't, weakened or anything. Anyway, he's gonna climb that beanstalk again and carry off some more of the ogre's treasures. So one morning he got up early, put on a different suit of clothes, that'll do it, so that the ogre's wife should not recognize him, and set out to climb the beanstalk. And he climbed 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 and he climbed, until at last he climbed to the very top and found himself in the ogre's country again. Also, in these months, the ogre never investigated where the beanstalk came up into his kingdom? Odd. When he reached the castle, the ogre's wife was again standing in the doorway. But when Jack asked for a night's lodging, she said she dared not give him one, for only a few months before she had taken in a poor boy who seemed half dead with fatigue and hunger. And in return for her kindness, he had stolen some of her husband's money and run away in the night. How terrible! But Jack begged so hard that at last she relented. She gave him a good supper and hid him in a closet before her husband came home. Presently, there was a great noise outside and heavy footsteps that shook the castle to its foundations. It was the great ogre come home. At last he entered the kitchen. He sniffed suspiciously and said, "I smell fresh meat." "It is only the crows on the housetops," said his wife. "They have brought home a piece of carrion for their young." After supper, the ogre told his wife to fetch his hen. This hen was a very wonderful bird. Whenever the ogre said lay, she would lay an egg of solid gold. I know some people can burp on command. Sorry, that's kind of gross, but being able to lay an egg on command, that's wow. Jack thought that if he could only get this wonderful hen to take home to his mother, she would never want any more. So when the ogre fell asleep, as he did after a little while, he came out of the closet and, seizing the hen in his arms, made off with her. I almost read that differently. The hen squawked, but the ogre's snoring was like the roaring of the sea when the tide was coming in, and Jack got safely down the beanstalk. I wish Jack would steal something other than what the ogre was fixated on at that point in time, you know? Anyway, the hen laid so many golden eggs that Jack and his mother became quite rich and prosperous. There was really no need for Jack to go again into the ogre's country. But he liked the danger and the excitement, and he remembered that the fairy had told him to take as many of the ogre's treasures as he could. You know, I bet she told that to his father too, and that's why his father kind of got killed. What a troublesome fairy. They're not always on our side, you know. So, anyway, Jack loves adventure and feels like he has a mission. So, at last, without saying a word to anybody, he started off once more to climb the magic beanstalk. And he climbed 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 until at last he reached the very tip top and stood in the ogre's country. This time when he reached the castle, he began to be afraid that the ogre's wife really would not let him in. I mean, I wouldn't. "Indeed and indeed I dare not," said she. "Twice lately I have given shelter to a wayfaring youth, So wait, she knows it's the same guy twice? And each time he stole some of my husband's treasures and made off with them. Now my husband has forbidden me, on pain of instant death, to give food or lodging to any traveler. Please don't push this one, Jack. She's gonna die if she shelters you, come on. But Jack pleaded, and at last the good-natured woman, moved to pity by his travel-stained appearance, gave way and led him into the castle. So she's good-natured, sure, but she also fattens humans up in the basement to feed to her husband? That seems like ill-natured. I mean, how can you say someone is good-natured if they also do that? Ay. When the ogre came home, the wife hid Jack in the copper. As usual, the ogre's first words were, "Wife, I smell fresh meat." And in spite of all his wife could say, he insisted upon searching all round the room. Jack was in a terrible fright whilst he was hunting, but fortunately he forgot to look in the copper, and after a time he sat down to his supper. When supper was over, the ogre told his wife to fetch his harp. Jack peeped out of the copper and saw the harp brought in and set down before the ogre. It was marvelously made, and when the ogre said, "Play," it played the finest tune without being touched. Jack was enchanted, for he had never before heard such wonderful music, and he felt that he must have the harp for his own. The ogre was soon lulled to sleep by the sweet sound of the harp, and when he was snoring heavily, Jack crept out of the copper and, taking up the harp, was about to make off with it again. But the harp was a fairy harp, dun dun dun, and it called out loudly, "Master, master, master!" And although the ogre was snoring so noisily that it was like the sound of 100 dragons roaring at once, yet to Jack's dismay and horror he heard the voice of the harp, and starting to his feet with a bellow of anger, rushed after the daring thief. Jack ran faster than he had ever run in his life before, still carrying the precious harp, while the ogre ran after him, shouting and roaring and making such a noise that it sounded like 1,000 thunderstorms all going at once. I love how this story describes the ogre's voice and snoring and roars. It is phenomenal. If he had not drunk so much wine for supper, the ogre must very soon have caught Jack. But as it was, the wine had got into his head, and he could not run nearly so fast as usual, and Jack reached the beanstalk just in front of him. It was a very close shave. Jack slid down the beanstalk at his top speed. Sounds risky. Calling at the top of his voice for his mother to fetch him an axe. The ogre came tumbling down the beanstalk after him, but Jack seized the axe and chopped the beanstalk off close to the root. Down came the beanstalk, down came the ogre, and falling headlong into the garden, he was killed on the spot. Kind of feel bad though, he was eating people, but after this, Jack quite gave up his lazy, idle ways. But why though? You have all the riches now. You have a hen that lays golden eggs for money. Anytime now is the time to be idle and lazy, but maybe he finally has aspirations as a thief. Anyway, he and his mother, with the magic hen and the wonderful harp, lived in happiness and prosperity for the rest of their lives. The end. Dear friends and beans, I hope you enjoyed this magical tale with magical beans, magical harps, hens, and I was going to say the magical first thing, but it was just money. Bags of money. But yes, I hope listening to this story helped you get through what you need to get through. There's plenty more if you need more stories to fill the time. But I will see you soon in the next video, and until then, off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, stay spooky, my friends. Good night.